would secure first place for G2, but it'll be a very tough challenge against a Griffin on form. Let's see what happens.
Thank you very much, Shox, and welcome to what could be our final game of the day, or maybe one more to finish out a best of 3 between G2 Esports and Griffin. We're already in the thick of pick and ban. The Renekton, the Yuumi, the Pantheon, and the Elise taken off the board.
And I already like what we see there. The Renekton and Elise both banned away from both of them. The Yuumi to block the potential Garen Yuumi from Griffin, as they've shown their propensity to play that bottom lane well. Can't wait for the picks to start coming through.
So Xayah, Rakan, that was the pick, or the ban rather, that I was looking
so
for.
So Qiyana's available.
Yes, but so is the Gragas, something that actually had a lot of priority, especially towards the end of the LEC playoffs, and it's something that has kind of not been as a higher priority throughout the group stages, but with the Elise banned away, it definitely makes Gragas a more favorable option.
And Gragas and Lee Sin, the two most picked junglers in the tournament so far, so, and a comfort pick for Jankos as well. Have to see what he can do with it as Griffin debate their options.
You've also got to remember the Talia for Tarzan, one of his most comfortable champions. With the Renekton taken off the board, maybe it lowers in priority, but I can see it being a pretty good matchup into the Gragas jungle, especially in the early game.
So many questions left for this draft phase. I loved the stat we had between Chovy and Caps there. 1 and 2 in KDA in the whole group stage, 1 and 2 in solo kills in the whole group stage. And that's a Qiyana jungle or solo lane. We don't know where it's going to go yet.
Flexibility for that pick, and I am nervous because Qiyana, we've seen a couple different variations. We've seen the do nothing until mid game when you're just an alt bot, and we've seen the Qiyanas who take over and dominate the early game from minute 1.
Ooh.
But the
we missed the Yasuo. It's the Gragas Yasuo bot lane, the G2 Esports Classic. They are going to lock in the Kayle as well. You would imagine for now that it is going to go into the mid lane, but there's still a lot of variation left for this G2 roster.
And as much as I think the Kai'Sa is a fantastic pick, Xayah could also be great as well. I feel like I want to see Viper match with a mage or something crazy, because these are the bot laners known for their innovations. And if we saw, I'll hold that thought. The Kai'Sa does get locked in, and that's going to be a fine pick, but difficult up against the Yasuo. Has the ulti to get around the wind wall, but if you fall behind against this champion, it is a miserable experience.
Yeah. Overall, though, I think Kai'Sa and Xayah are strong picks almost regardless of the circumstance, so can't really fault them there. And I want to talk a little bit, as we get to the second phase of bans, about the Kayle, because I was wondering, since it's a very high presence champion, if a team was going to be willing to go for it, since I think the early game in this matchup is going to be so pivotal. Where is this going to go, and what type of early game pressure is G2 going to have to sack because they picked it?
Well, I like that right now, Griffin, unsure. They spent a lot of time thinking about what they wanted to ban away, but they're not sure of who is going where. It's one of the difficulties that teams around the world have struggled with when going up against G2. I think they should ban the Ryze away now, because expectations are that this Yasuo and Gragas will go into the bot, and Ryze is something that G2 have prioritized throughout the day. They're happy to play it both top and mid. It provides you with a strong early to mid game transition, and it works effectively in a side lane. So I think if they don't take it away, this is something G2 will go for.
But instead it'll be the Leona ban. More concerned about the Gragas in the jungle. And the one on the bottom side of the map is Griffin. Don't want to potentially give over the Syndra-Leona combo. We've seen how strong it can be in solo queue. Do not want to see it here on the stage. And have to wonder if Griffin are ready for this to go bot lane. Obviously still flexible. You mentioned it already, Vedius. This is the G2 strength. This is the thing that they are known for, is creative drafts and heavy use of these kind of flex picks.
Oh, the Volley Bear ban. They want to make sure they have a strong laning 2v2 with the Yasuo and Gragas. There are a couple of supports left available, things like the Thresh they could take into consideration. Morgana is another one. The Black Shield's pretty good at mitigating the knockups. But if you want a more aggressive bot laner, Lehends is known for his support Shen.
And the Shen support is something that can work very well against G2. We saw in the finals of the LEC, when Caps was trying to go in for a lot of 1v1 trades, the support Shen would be what turned that around. So not necessarily an amazing pick in terms of dominating the lane, but can be very good in this circumstance.
And now we see the Lee Sin coming out, which confirms the Gragas into the support position. And of course, Mickey, one of the most practiced Gragas players in the world, long before it was picked up into the bot lane. Shen trading well into melee champions in the early game if it is committed to the support position.
Rise.
Yeah. Don't opt to ban it away, Vedius, and There it is.
They've showcased the priority for it throughout the day. It doesn't surprise me that they want to try and grab it. My question is, which lane do they want to try and put it into? Right now, Griffin still hold a lot of cards as well. You don't know where the Qiyana or Akali is going to go. I believe that we're expecting this Qiyana to go in the jungle, and we're going to see a final lock-in for the side of Griffin. And what other champion could it be other than Sword's Jace? He's known for his Jace and his Aatrox. These are the two champions that he played the most throughout the competitive year, and it looks like that it's going to be going into his hands.
And I have questions about this one. We talked about how important early game power it is. It's clear that Griffin have drafted for early game power. G2 Esports, to a certain degree, early game power. The Kayle, the weak point you pointed out, Jan. And the question is, who gets it? Who has to play the Kayle in this matchup and suffer in the early game?
I mean, this could be a game where we're seeing the swaps come in at exactly 20 seconds because Chovy played the Akali earlier on today, even if he's more known as Jace. And you can see G2 is constantly swapping them back and forth.
Where's it going to go? 20 seconds is the cutoff point. One more swap.
All right, that's it.
Wunder going to play the Kayle. Can still swap in-game. Can still go to mid lane if he wants to.
So I tend to like this bet from G2, that Wunder will be able to withstand Sword and Tarzan, because Sword and Tarzan have been ridiculously inconsistent in the early game. Even the very first time these two matched up, they couldn't get in sync for their Renekton Talia gank on Wunder. So putting Tarzan's attention towards that top lane, where even if Wunder dies, he'd still outscale, I think is a smart choice by G2.
And G2 on the cusp of a perfect group. Can they do it? We're going to find out. And everyone out there, this is the match that you have been waiting for, LEC and LCK fans alike. It is G2 versus Griffin, a perfect group on the line for G2. Griffin, or looking to force the tiebreaker, everything for both of these teams.
It's been a hotly debated topic. Who is stronger between G2 and Griffin? Remember that Griffin is the team that finished first at the end of the regular season for 3 splits in a row. They've been in the last 3 LCK finals, but have yet to qualify as the first seed. Whereas G2 are your MSI champions. They are currently hold the title of best team in the world, yet because of the ceiling and potential of Griffin, many people believe that they should and can be better than this G2 squad.
And today they're going up against the 6th man of this crowd, clearly in the favor of G2 Esports. And now we keep our eyes on the early game. Early in the tournament, the story was aggressive level 1s from Griffin. But this time around, it's different. Today, they have been much more patient, much more reserved in the early game. And it is just going to be a standard start for both teams as Qiyana will opt for the red buff, and a similar story for Gragas on the bottom side.
And a pretty healthy pull by Sword for Tarzan on this red buff. Thinking about the Qiyana jungle, it is something that can fall behind if the early game doesn't go well. We saw it from Jankos when Jankos played Qiyana jungle against Cloud9 in the first half of the group stage. So a healthy pull, giving him into red and Krugs, trying to get him to level 3 as fast as possible for that first game.
Yeah, you said it perfectly, Jack. We very much expect Qiyana to do a full topside clear on the red side so that you get that level 3 mark. You can then look for an early gank if you want. She is very potent at that level 3 point. But notice that Jankos as well is actually doing a red into Krugs clear. He's now level 2, and it looks like he's going for an invade. There is a ward on the blue buff, though, from the side of Griffin, so they will be aware of this still happening, and it means that Tarzan could look for a cross map over on the other side, because it's likely he's not going to get here in time.
So this also means that we're going to be seeing a split map, with Griffin splitting towards Sword on the top side and G2 splitting towards Perks and Mickey on the bottom side. Again, it's so much of this, I think, bet that G2 is making that Sword and Tarzan won't be able to snowball against Wunder.
And look, the pings are coming down on the minimap. Griffin are aware that there is a ward here, and Cap's already roaming up to force Tarzan away. They are expecting this top lane gank, and they aren't able to pull it off.
That was actually a great play by Caps that will not show up in the score sheet. When you split the map like that while invading the blue buff, you're leaving your top laner out to dry, and that was a recognition by Wunder and Caps that Caps needed to go there right there to keep Wunder alive. He did. It means Jankos can recover. It means he can actually 3-buff him because he didn't full clear, and G2 pull off the counter jungle and protect their top laner.
This is the second game in a row that multiple members of G2 have looked to disrupt Tarzan's early plays. In the first game they played, it was contesting camps, giving up their lane pressure to do so. Now it's Caps roaming very early just to make sure that Wunder is safe. So eyes on Tarzan, on the Kiana, very conventionally considered one of the strongest champions on this patch to get something done.
Let's not forget that in the early laning phase, we're expecting Griffin to look to try and play around their solo laners, and you can already see the damage that Chovy is doing in this 1v1 and why he is regarded as such a strong mid laner by so many analysts across the world.
Difficult for Caps, running out of mana very quickly, obviously against an energy champion with Fleet as well, just hard to match here. Looks like we'll be forced to burn an early TP. Hopefully he can get a tier just to kick things off, help him stay a little bit more powerful in the trades to come.
Yeah, the early lane for the new-ish Rise is actually not that powerful. It's more powerful once he's able to get some points in his ultimate and get a few items under his belt. So expect Chovy to be able to push in a little bit back and forth, especially when he hits level 5.
Back will not get canceled there. Caps trying for it, but maybe can force a TP out of Chovy. Chovy should have enough time to get back to lane, but Lahen's waiting, hiding in the brush. Kiana is already leaving, though, and Windwall, of course, can disrupt a lot of what Griffin are looking to do.
So what I like in this early game is the amount of respect that is being showed towards Griffin, because...
Watch out for the Jankos gank, because Griffin's going to try and shove this in, and Jankos would be here to gank. Tarzan's not there to cover.
Tornado's up. Third stack of the Steel Tempest. He's already burned Windwall. Maybe Perkz was hoping to bait them in with that major cooldown missing.
But what's important to remember about Griffin is, as a team, they're not known for snowballing through a lot of kills. We've talked a lot about it over the last 2 weeks of Worlds, which is this team primarily relies on control from the jungler and the strong mechanical prowess of their laners to build advantages. And you can already see advantage being built top, advantage being built mid, Mira's bot lane, because he's just reset, he's going to be a little bit behind. But this is how Griffin typically like to play, and what G2 is doing is they're controlling Tarzan. They don't want to allow him to give his laners the control, so they cannot play as aggressively as they often like to do.
Yeah, and I think we don't necessarily have a word for the way Griffin plays in our League of Legends dictionary, because they're low kill, but they're not slow.
Yes.
They apply a lot of pressure through aggressive laning, while Tarzan actually tries to track the enemy jungler. It's getting flipped around on him a little bit here. So Griffin was the best early game team in terms of gold in the LCK, and that was a league that doesn't necessarily contest things early. So I've been fascinated with seeing how it will actually match up against G2 if both teams are playing well. When Griffin tries to apply that pressure for CS and gold advantage, and then G2 fights back.
And of course, G2, I feel like a lot of common misconceptions around their early game, the mid game, where they come online, where they are strongest around those first items, and they can use pressure advantages to make big plays. So a passive early game feels fine for both these teams. As we get closer to level 6s, closer to first items, though, you expect, I think, just an explosion of action somewhere on the map.
Yeah, scaling is quite an interesting one in this game, because I feel like it's quite close between the both teams. Yasuo is a champion that scales very well the later you get, but Akali is someone that in a side lane can outduel almost every champion in the game. So it feels like that both teams have options to play the split push, play the team fight, and a lot of this game is going to come down to execution.
I feel like if I had to give a team a scaling advantage, though, it would definitely be G2. Rise and Kale can, I think, both eventually reach a 1v1 point while they'll take down the other solo laner.
And that's fair.
So I think that would mean that G2 would be okay having this game stay fairly close based on the team comps, and really based on the fact that Kale hit 6 against a Jace at even CS.
And that was something we talked about so much in the draft. Who would actually sacrifice an early game to play the Kale? And so far, there has been no sacrifice. And it feels like, once again, similar to the first time we saw these teams, the pressure is on Sword to get something done, to make something happen, to build a greater advantage in this lane, because he will just eventually get outscaled.
The Kleptomancy paying off for Wunder right now. He's already started to build up a small advantage in the top lane 1 versus 1, playing defensively. Arguably, Wunder, one of the weakest performing players of G2 so far in the group stages. A lot of unintentional deaths, a lot of getting caught out of position. Still offering value to his team and not being an ultimate detriment, but often the targeted focus for many of his opposition in the group stages.
It's a similar story to when he played the Vladimir up against Cloud9, obviously having a much better early game, but is always going to be that late game threat. And even if he blunders in the early game, can be a reliable force in the team fights to come. But interesting now, the TP from Griffin. This is the advantage that Akali built earlier, finally paying off. Chovy's aggressive early lane now allows him to get to this objective a little bit faster. Cap's coming in on the backside, but he has to be careful. If they don't...
can steal.
Wants to go in. Yanko's get it away. Is he going to be able to get anything else? Baron, ooh, Dragon getting lower and lower. Ocean Drake will go down. Jankos escapes with his life, but well played by Griffin to secure the objective.
Yeah, such patience by both junglers there, actually getting the Dragon to reset as Jankos needed to take that resonating strike to try and get the execute. So really touch and go play there. Actually, the fact that Jankos didn't die should feel pretty fortunate for him.
Now, the bright side for G2 is that both Sword and Chovy just used their teleports. Because Caps and Wonder used them earlier on, theirs will be up and available at an earlier state, which means that they can look to try and make a play elsewhere on the map if they want to. Meanwhile, Griffin, they're going to be feeling pretty comfortable getting that early Ocean. It can offer a lot of value during the laning phase, especially if you're going for a lot of active trades in the early on. So someone like an Akali who's always trying to get into the face of the Rise can gain some additional value off the back of that.
And as well for a Kiana in the jungle who might take a little bit more damage, no innate sustain in the kit, to be full health every time she's threatening a gank is very solid to have. Especially as we look for level 6s now to start coming in. Obviously a lot of playmaking potential for both the Kiana and the Lee Sin, and so far, while there's been a lot of plays, there've been no kills yet.
Now, with the Drake going down, Griffin choosing to swap towards the top side, they want to get ahead of the play, given that Perks and Mickey are sticking around for another wave, but the Rift Herald has not spawned yet. So there's actually plenty of time for G2 to be able to respond. The question is, will they recognize that Lehends is in the top lane and looking for a kill?
Whole team now moving up.
For a while.
Wonder could be in trouble here. Obviously has the ultimate available. The flash taunt is going to connect. Wonder can't just use the ult on himself. He now needs to make it out to safety. His flash not available, but he will retreat, using it to get out. His first blood drops, and Jankos goes down.
And that was Griffin having the positioning to be able to try 2 plays at once because they had kind of abandoned that bottom lane much earlier.
Just getting killed. Now the rest of the G2 just trying to force out mid lane, hoping to get some kind of priority to maybe stop or contest this Herald.
But this is how Griffin like to play. Control. They recognize where they have pressure on the map, and they play around it beautifully. It's a great example of just good fundamental League of Legends. Just understanding where you can move, where you have control, and when the enemy moves into a space that doesn't belong to them, they punish you. And they successfully found a pick onto Jankos, which will now convert into a Rift Herald.
And they've also been able to temporarily avoid the Gragas Yasuo death combo. That's where the lane really turns on, is when both of them hit level 6, they go. But by leaving the lane right before then, Mickey not only is at level 5, but Perks is down bottom without a teleport. So we saw the gank happening top lane. Jankos was just trying to get the Rift Herald, and it's pretty much just a CC lock by Tarzan, catching someone in the river as a level 6 Kiana.
And we were just talking about areas of the map that you can't go. This was a great example of there was no wave pushing in mid. There was no wave there. Caps was forced to play defensive because he doesn't have information. Wonder gets forced back because of the swap top. So Griffin have all the pieces and tools to control the river. Jankos doesn't respect it. He ends up getting killed, which is why when you're playing at the highest level and you make these small mistakes, both of these teams are very good at punishing you. Whereas Griffin does it with small picks and vision control, G2 does it by snowballing and converting it into even bigger fights.
And if we think about what that swap got them, it's Summoner spells on Wonder. He's so much more vulnerable now. His ulti gone off cooldown, and additionally the Rift Herald too. So have to see where Griffin are going to use this to continue to extend their lead. Plates are still up. We'll offer a bit more gold. Lehends waiting in the darkness.
They're looking for a pinch on either Mickey or Perks.
Mickey needs to get out. Perks also needs to get out. The wind wall will not stop the Shenton from connecting. Instead, they're focusing the isolated target. They're just going to delete him. Jankos thought he had the angle, thought he could make the play, but did not get a chance to do so. Now it's a TP on the top side, but I feel like this cannot be the right decision. G2 now fishing, looking for the collapse. Wonder TPing into enemy lines. G2 maybe looking for a play here, but Wonder's just going to drop. Meanwhile, Caps is now in trouble. He needs to make it out, but the Shen is coming in. The wind wall might not be enough. Chovy, what else can he get done? The Akali trying to make his way through the fight, trying to finish off these kills. Mickey goes down. Griffin are dominating G2. Chovy looking for the Caps kill. Can he get him? Where's the Shuriken flip? He is going to look to follow. Does manage to contest. The lockdown is there. Caps going to zoom his way out. Jankos now coming in. Can't afford to take that Q, but just such a close exchange.
Griffin just wrecked G2 in that top lane fight. Not only do they again catch Jankos before anything can happen, kind of stopping G2 from being able to engage, they capitalize on a bizarre teleport from Wonder.
Perk's now in trouble though.
Jankos is there.
Windwall has been burned. They don't find the knockup. Caps is here as well. They're burning so many TPs just to move into this mid lane. They have advantage. They will be able to break one plate, but meanwhile, Kai'Sa's breaking down the top lane, and Viper's going to get further and further ahead.
And it's punish after punish coming out from the side of Griffin. Notice how they've extended their gold lead now to 3,000. This game was dead even. It was neutral. G2 were matching what Griffin were trying to do in the early game, but these small mistakes coming out from G2 were immediately punished from the likes of Griffin, and now they've ballooned this gold difference very heavily in their favor.
And also the Infernal Drake is up in 4 seconds, and Wunder is top lane on a flashless, TP-less Kayle, so Griffin's going to get the setup on this Infernal Drake.
And look at the items that have now been completed. Youmuu's Ghostblade is available for Sword. His TP is going to be available soon, but G2 do currently have control over the river.
And Jankos needs to look for a play. He's been the one getting jumped on, but he has Flash, Ult, level 7, and they have Gragas Ultimate. So G2 would really want to get a kill here before getting Drake.
Moving in. Multiple members. Wunder giving him CS on the top side to do this, but Griffin are not just going to give it up without a fight.
Qiyana ult is up, so G2 has to concede river.
Backing off. Both teams very clearly focused on this Infernal, but taking off again. He's going to go in. Jankos knocked back with a Thundering Blow. Good play from Sword.
That's a lot of damage.
Jankos needs to make his way out. Jungler's so low. It feels like Griffin now just get priority on the Infernal.
Jankos overstays trying to clear a ward. Sword chunks him out. And notice, again, Griffin have control over mid lane. G2 are constantly trying to make these small plays, and Griffin are the team that are coming out on top.
And when Griffin is at their best, it's because they apply this type of pressure on you. They force you into these decisions. They get 1 or 2 kills and then turn that into so much more. So they chunk out Jankos, they slowly start the Drake, and it looks like it's going to be conceded over to Griffin.
Excellent patience from the side of Griffin. They've played around this Drake extremely well. They've conceded nothing. And they're continuing to keep the pressure up.
G2's here.
G2.
Chovy doesn't know they're here.
Barrel, now going to go back. That's all the seasons they need. He goes back, he gets kicked out. A good pick for G2. Doesn't make up the gold difference, but it does help them get back in the game.
So G2 will find themselves a pick. The gold gap closes ever so slightly as they find a good shutdown. And now they have their eyes set on the tower. But Griffin want to fight.
Shen on the way in. Lehens is going to come to this fight. The knockup may stop more, but it's not going to be enough. Qiyana cutting through the team. Jace finishing off 2. Sword with the double.
And Griffin absolutely massacre Perks and Jankos as they tried to siege onto the tower. And now it's Griffin sieging. What looked like a bright spark for G2 ends up getting snuffed out by Griffin.
Even though Sword didn't make an advantage known in the early laning phase, he is full lethality powered up now with these 3 kills. I think the question will be for G2 is how well can Cap side lane, keep his farm up, keep that best in group stage KDA alive, and how well Wunder can scale up, because the early game has been all Griffin.
Absolutely has. Incredibly dominant performance. And as we look back at this replay, you can see G2 clean kill, right? Feels good, but as they continue to move forward in this play, it starts to turn against them.
And these teams are so good. I just got to credit there. The W actually by Chovy while the cast was in the air, doesn't matter. And then G2 definitely overstays, not respecting the Shen ultimate. That's definitely a learning, I think, from the LEC finals, and this support Shen pick has generated some good plays.
And in that what's your move replay, clearly the move for G2 was to stay just a little bit too long, and now we see the power of Shen support, something that I'm not used to seeing. There've been a lot of misses with Shen support recently.
And so far it is working out nicely for Griffin. They want to try and force, I believe with a Griffin win here, we will be forced into a tiebreaker game, so they will have to play again in order to fight for first place in this group.
If Griffin wins, because G2 will have a faster average win time, G2 would also have side select in the tiebreaker. So in order for Griffin to get first place in this group, you are correct. They would not only have to win this game, but the next one. This is incredibly similar to the situation we saw last year in the IG and Fnatic group, where Fnatic ended up winning 2 games on the final day. G2 is hoping to be IG in this situation and just finish off with a 6-0.
And you have to wonder, they have to come back. They've got the scaling. For now, they've got the time, but Griffin continuing to push forward in this map, lay down more vision, push into G2 territory, and it's going to get harder and harder for G2 to play until they get a few more items under their belts.
So one of the notes I wrote down before coming into this game was Lehens versus Mickey. Something that I've praised Mickey a lot for is his roaming and ability to have impact outside of just the laning phase, but especially in the second half of groups, we've been seeing a lot more of that from the Griffin support and Lehens. And with a Shen ultimate, it's naturally a lot easier to impact the rest of the map, but notice how a lot more resources have been funneled into Perks, so he's level 10, but Lehens is the same level at being level 9, as is AD Carry, who just now picked over to 10, but he has a big experience advantage and item advantage over his support counterpart, which means he can face check, he can frontline, he can offer overall so much more value than Mickey can, who on this Gragas, while he's known for it domestically, has so far been able to have a huge impact alongside Perks' well-known Yasuo.
Yeah, just has to be careful. Obviously, the playmaking potential for the Gragas Yasuo combo is huge, but if someone is there to body block that body slam, he will find himself going down very quickly as Tarzan using the grass blade to sneak his way out of that brush and out of that situation as G2 start to move towards the top side.
The ability for Griffin to force a fight, though, is so potent with Tarzan. Look at the flank.
Blade. Oh, it's going to come into the wall. That's going to be a double. No, Yanko's managing to make it out in time. They're kicking the Kale ult out. Mickey still alive, still on the retreat, but Chovy's going to bring a Shen right in the middle of the team. That's the double taunt. Chovy going to look to finish off the kill. Goes back in with the Shuriken flip. And Griffin again finding a fight in their favor.
G2 actually nearly escaped that one, even though the initiation looked so good from Griffin. But now Griffin has the kills. They push G2 all the way out of the mid jungle, and they can take even more control over the central part of this map.
We're seeing the power of Kiana once again as well. The moment G2 gets spotted, they get engaged on, and now G2 are looking for something back, but Chovy's just going to immediately disengage, and Griffin are just playing so clean so far in this game. Good draft, easy setup for their solo laners, and here we see G2 trying to get some river control, but it was Griffin who had mid-priority. They also had greater numbers, and the Kiana ultimate immediately forces G2 to split apart, and here we also saw the value of Lehends on this Shen, allowing Chovy to dive into the backline and set up the play to find that kill.
And Mickey's cast coming in there, I think, saved G2, combined with the Wonder Ult. Because if it was not for that disengage, if it wasn't for the Kale ult to keep him alive, we might have seen 3 or 4 members going down. Griffin still had plenty of tools up and available to continue to chase. So, silver lining on a very dark cloud for G2 at this moment.
Yeah, but I think because of the potential scaling that G2 has, Griffin has to continue to be clean in this game. If they make a bad engage, give over a team fight, that could just be Baron for G2 and come back in the game with a leveling up Kale, who's now at level 11 to kind of get that next big transform. No reason to think that's going to happen, though, based on how well Griffin has played these first 20 minutes.
And you can see 1.5 items coming in for the Kale, but you already have double lethality items completed for Sword on the top side, and no one's building armor on this team. You might see a Zanya's later in the game, maybe a GA coming in from Perks, but no one is tanky enough to really support building multiple armor items to deal with this early lethality.
So now the Baron setup will start for Griffin. 3 Drakes in their pocket. River control with Kiana, who just hit level 11 to make that ultimate even more powerful. And this is where G2 will really be tested here. After rolling through the first 5 games of this group stage, the kind of clear-cut group, making this a fight between G2 and Griffin. 5,000 gold down, 3 Drakes down. They would need some exceptional team play to come back in this one.
And you can see how cautiously they are moving into the river. Do not want to give anything up. Vision, very defensive from Griffin around that Baron, but it will make sure that G2 can't go for anything sneaky, anything crazy as a desperate attempt to get back. On the bottom side, Wonder doing what he can to hold on for now. As long as he has that ult up and available, he's not really threatened for the dive, but can't afford to use that cooldown or could find himself very much at risk against Chovy's Akali.
Chovy's a little overextended right now. He doesn't necessarily have to reset, but he does have to be careful because the rest of his team did just go back to base to pick up a lot more wards. You can see Griffin immediately use this small window to move into the river. They have no one pushing up mid lane right now, but G2 probably don't feel super comfortable just face checking into this part of the map, especially without that much control over the wave. So Griffin taking their time, not needing to overforce anything, looking to gain information on where G2 is.
Yeah, and I think G2 will also want to wait on Mickey and Yankos' flash, because the real way they can find a team fight is if they can get an initiation onto a Sword or a Viper at the start of the fight.
Yankos stepping forward, Sonic Wave. Low connect is going to go in, the King's going to go in, Yasuo's going to find the follow, but he goes golden, and now the Shen's on the way in, and Perks is right into the wall and right out of the fight. The flash taunt is perfect from Lehends. Griffin are dominating already. Nice. Caps to turn this one around, but Caps might just have what it takes to turn the fight in favor of G2. He's running down Sword, the Realm Warp is coming out, Viper can look for the turn. Sword is now stepping back into his team. They can't finish the kill. The heal is clutch, and it's Wonder and Caps on the run. Wonder and Caps versus the 4 members standing on the side of Griffin. They're on the retreat, but Griffin are desperate to find it. The acceleration gate helping him chase down.
If he can get Plasma, he might look to ult in.
There's no taunt flash there. Wonder has to be the sacrificial lamb. Only Caps is going to be able to escape. Griffin, what else can they get? Chovy goes over the wall. The movement speed coming in from the Shroud. The taunt locks him down. Caps in trouble. Caps is going to go down. Griffin dominate the fight.
So they get a bunch of kills off of that one, but the silver lining for G2 would be the Baron is at least delayed. All 5 members of G2 died just for Tarzan, but now Griffin wants to keep the pressure up. They're resetting and going straight for this Baron. Controller down, they cleared the vision. Jankos would need to steal.
3 members of G2 running in against the 5 stacked up against Griffin. Should be impossible odds. There's no way from blue side that they can make their way into this pit comfortably. Mickey on the Gragas, but Jankos not gonna get there in time. Griffin taking the Baron.
And Griffin have accelerated this game as G2 have attempted to fight back, something many LCK teams did not do towards Griffin. But watching this one more time, you can see Jankos knew they had to get a fight onto Sword, but he can't quite get behind him. It buys some time, and then the fact that Sword had the stopwatch just does buy enough time for the immediate redemption to come in and Tarzan to be able to counter that. And Caps on the backside, nearly carrying this fight.
Caps does what he can, but unfortunately, it's not enough. And Griffin's reaction speed to that fight was just unbelievable. This team has showcased such a difference from week 1 to week 2, and questions were asked, is this the level of performance that they would be able to demonstrate against G2? And I mean, the evidence speaks for itself. This has been a very clean game from Griffin start to finish.
G2, that dream of a perfect group stage is starting to slip away. The biggest deficit they came back from domestically, let's hold that thought for a brief moment, 5.8k up against Fnatic. This is much bigger than that.
And now Griffin with the Baron buff is trying to get multiple waves, but if they can just catch Mickey while going for flank, this is the thing, G2 always tries to fight back, and Griffin is stopping them with flank wards every time G2 tries to go for it.
Exactly that, Jat. G2 is a team that will try to fight their way back into the game.
Look, they're defending the inner tier too.
They're going in. Kiana just going to cut through the entire team. Jankos has to run for the hills, and you have to feel like Griffin are going to break the base right here.
G2 is in no right to defend that turret. They had to concede before that. They allowed Griffin to be able to flank around. And that's now 30-second death timers on Caps and Perks. It is at least 2 inhibitors for Griffin.
12k gold lead. Baron minions crashing on the bottom side. One more fight in the favor of Griffin, and they will end the game. It is only 3 members of G2 holding on here. Anytime they step forward, it is potentially too much confidence. They're very much at risk. Griffin, though, will give them the respect. They will back off. They will wait for a better opportunity to end this game.
Such a clean lead coming out from Griffin right now. This is what many LCK fans wanted to see. This was the group stage style of play that you see from Griffin. And Jan and I talked a lot about it this game, where their style is, we don't really have a name for how they approach the game, but what you can say is that it is smooth, it is difficult to deal with if they get ahead, and whenever you make the tiniest mistake, they punish you extremely hard. And as Jack was saying, G2 think they can hold this tower. They think that as the 3, they are in their right to defend this, but
there's no way.
A great ultimate from Tarzan sets up the play to allow Griffin to just melt through G2 and secure 2 inhibitors.
And now it's just on Griffin to close this one out cleanly, because the scaling angle, that hope, is falling further and further away. And of course, 3 items for the KO might be nice, 3 items for the Rise could be good, the Yasuo as well, but realistically, Griffin just have absolute control of this map with 2 inhibitors down.
Yeah, Wonder would want 2 more levels to hit level 16, but it is looking very Griffin favored. Remember, if Griffin close out this game, that will force a tiebreaker for first seed in this group. Both these teams already going to the quarterfinals. They're fighting for the #1 and #2 seeds. G2, because of average win time throughout the group, would also have side select in said tiebreaker. So Griffin trying to end this one out and then move on to the next game.
A long day for both lineups to move into that tiebreaker. And it's easy to say, hey, they've already made it out. Seeding doesn't mean anything. But obviously, when you look at the difference in teams, it could be a difference, and that's going to be it. The K-Log comes out, but it might be a little bit too early. They're going to save Jankos, but what is it going to cost them? As Chovy's in the back line, Lehens is going to be hand-delivered right into the face of Wonder, and he's got no ult to protect himself. But still, Griffin, Viper, diving in, and that's all it's going to take. Caps tries to run for the hills, but the Plasma stacks are going to be enough. Goals golden. They're going to step forward. They're going to look to body box. They're going to protect their 80 carry, and Griffin, they're going to end the game. They're going to deny the perfect group for Europe. That's a right only Korea has. And now Griffin will move on to force the tiebreaker for first seed.
And Griffin has officially arrived at the World Championship, and they are a force to be reckoned with. They force a tiebreaker against G2 to see who can be first seed in this group.
What a beautiful display of high-level League from the side of Griffin. We saw some positive things from G2 at the start of the game. We saw some great tracking of Tarzan, expecting what he's going to do and mitigating it. But then a couple small mistakes coming out from G2. Oh, Jankos tries to go in for the Drake, tries to steal that one away. Okay, he loses his flash, not the end of the world. Then he gets caught out topside, that's one kill. And then it just kind of continues, it's one kill after another before it's ballooning into this massive lead that Griffin just will not relent control over.
And I think you're immediately going to start to wonder what's going to happen the next time these two teams play against each other. Are they going to let Tarzan have Kiana, a champion that was almost banned for infinity in the LEC playoffs because of the way